Welcome to World War II Chronicles, a weekly tribute to America's fighting men and women in commemoration of the Second World War. These programs are narrated by Ed Herlihy and are based on the news broadcasts of the war period from the recorded sound collection of the National Archives in Washington, D.C.
During World War II, few American civilians were allowed to travel outside the United States if they were not specifically engaged in government business. In August of 1942, however, Franklin Roosevelt's opponent in the previous presidential election sought permission from the president to examine the progress of the war around the globe. On August 20th, 1942, it was announced that Wendle Wilke would be Roosevelt's Goodwill ambassador in a world tour. Wilke's first stop was the Middle East.
In Cairo today, American, British, and Egyptian newspapermen were gathered at U.S. Army headquarters to say hello to Wendle Wilke, who came to town yesterday.
Wendell L. Wilke left for Jerusalem today after a one-day stop at Beirut, Syria, during which he conferred with fighting French leader General Charles de Gaulle and officials of the Lebanese and Syrian governments.
Wendell Wilke, en route to Moscow, has arrived in Baghdad, Iraq. He went to the home of Premier Nuri Pasha Es Said, whose guest he will be during his visit in Baghdad.
In an effort to reassure the United States allies in the USSR and China, Wilke also made stops in Moscow and Chongqing.
Wendell Wilke confers with Stalin.
Wendell Wilke arrived in Minneapolis this afternoon to rest up from his long trip home from Chongqing. The president said he had notified Mr. Wilke that he would be delighted to see him at the White House at his convenience soon after he gets to Washington.
Wilke returned home to the United States on October 13th. The next day, he went to Washington to share with President Roosevelt what he had learned on his trip.
In Washington this evening, Wendell Wilke called at the White House to confer with the president at 5:15. He is still talking to Mr. Roosevelt.
2 weeks later, he reported to the American public on the need for U.S. leadership in the world after the war.
If I ever had any doubt that the world has become small and completely interdependent, this trip would have dispelled them altogether. There are no distant points in the world any longer.
I'm Ed Herlihy. Join me next time for World War II Chronicles.
World War II Chronicles was produced by the American Veterans Center and Radio America in cooperation with the National Archives. To listen to more episodes, subscribe on iTunes or visit AmericanVeteransCenter.org. We need your help to keep the legacy of our World War II generation alive. Visit AmericanVeteransCenter.org to make a donation to support World War II Chronicles and the ongoing work of the American Veterans Center.